Hello my lovely subscribers. In this video we cover 6 creepy stories submitted by subscribers. And if any of you would like to be featured in the next video of subscriber stories, be sure to send your story to southerncannibal@gmail.com. Now sit back and relax, and let's begin. And remember to always stay hungry. Number 1. This happened back in April of 2018. I was on a return trip from Connecticut and I had a transfer and a 3-hour layover in New York City. I was very overwhelmed because it was my first time traveling that far from home. New York was exactly what I had imagined it. A rustic dump of a city. The train station I was at was dingy and crowded. I had some time to kill, so I went outside for a cigarette and to see the streets. I remember that it was a rainy afternoon and the streets were full of people. I stood out there looking like an obvious newcomer. I was approached by 2 guys who were enthralled by my style. I'm goth, and I was wearing heavy black eye makeup and a black trench coat, and my hair is shaved on both sides. The guys weren't too weird, just forward, and overall very friendly towards me, but it was still uncomfortable in talking to strangers in such a dangerous city. I walked away from them and bought a hot dog from the street vendor, and then I went back inside. I decided to go and wait in the Amtrak waiting area for my train. I opted to sit towards the back of the room with my back to the wall, so that I could keep my eye on everything and everyone around me. I sat down in a chair beside this young woman who was sitting on the floor playing with her son, who was playing with Legos. The boy looked to be about 5 or 6 years old and was wearing a pair of Iron Man pajamas. Something to know about me is that I get very hawk-eyed around children, whether I know them or not. I listen to way too many of these types of stories and watch too many true crime documentaries on YouTube to take any kind of chance. I was eyeing the room and noticed an elderly man come into the waiting area. He was wearing a black trench coat and just had this look about him that made my stomach lurch. Something just told me to keep an eye on him. He sat down in the row of seats adjacent to where the little boy was sitting. No red flags yet. I decided that I didn't like the hot dog that I just purchased and got up to throw it away. As I was doing so, a PSA came over the intercom saying that if you see anyone acting suspicious, to say something to the authorities. Talk about irony. As I sat back down, I noticed the man was taking out a camera. At first glance, one would assume he was just receiving his photos from a trip or something. Unfortunately, had that been the case, I wouldn't be telling this story. The man was sitting face forward, but he was positioning the camera to his side, pointing it directly toward the little boy. My stomach dropped and I was getting really upset. My immediate reaction was to get up and smack the camera out of his hands, but I thought against that as it would be assault. Instead, I tapped the boy's mother on the shoulder frantically. "Ma'am, that man over there is taking photos of your son," I said to her urgently in a low voice. "Please keep an eye on him." The color drained from the lady's face as she thanked me profusely for being so observant. I just nodded and repeated to her to keep an eye on her son. A few moments later, the boy's father returned with an older boy. I gently tapped him on his shoulder and repeated what I had told his wife. She thanked me again as I did. I then told the both of them that I was going to alert the authorities. I then got up and found the first NYPD officer and reported what I had seen. After that, I decided to go outside for another cigarette. I was sick to my stomach and fuming. After I finished my cigarette, I went back to the waiting area and walked through, making sure to make eye contact with the little boy's father. I nodded to him as a sign that I alerted the authorities, and he nodded back. Not wanting to be near the creep, I moved on to the other side of the waiting area and waited for my train while watching everything around me. I was only in New York for 3 hours, but I never want to go there ever again. To the creepy old man who was cropping snapshots of a little boy in his pajamas, I really hope the police stopped you and that I never see you again. Number 2. This all started in May of last year, but before I start, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Matt, a 17-year-old student, and I like to smoke weed with my friends. And that's basically what this story is all about. Throughout the months, I've been riding a bus to my friend's village where we would smoke some weed, chill out, and talk about basic stuff. All the time when I was there, we noticed an old drunk guy, probably in his mid-70s. The only time he ever talked to us was when he wanted to know where he was. Strange, I said to myself, but I guess he was so wasted that he didn't even know where he lives. We told him where he was and he just smiled and walked away. After he walked away, we kind of laughed about it, but man, I wish we never had. What he said next made a shiver run down my spine. He said, "What are you laughing at, you little brats? Do you want me to chop off your heads?" We stopped laughing and just stared at him. When I wanted to say something back, he just yelled and said, "You better get out of here or I will hurt each one of you, especially the fat one." He was talking about me as I'm a little below 240 pounds. But this pissed me off so much that I started to yell back at him saying, "Who the hell you calling fat, you drunk idiot?" My friends tried to stop me, but we were yelling at each other for a good minute. It all ended when he growled and quietly said to himself, "I'm going to get all 4 of them," and just walked away. We thought it was over and he was probably just really drunk, so we ignored it for the rest of the day. I kept seeing him here and there, but he didn't really say anything, just kept staring at me dead in the eyes. A couple of weeks went by and I almost forgot about it, to be honest. When I came back in the middle of June, everything was fine, or so I thought. We had a party at Mike's house, including me, Paul, John, Veronica, who is Mike's girlfriend, Kate, and Ellie, Veronica's sister. This party went well so far. Ellie even flirted with me for a bit. We didn't drink, only smoked weed, and that's what we were doing. We were hitting some bongs, rolling joints, blunts, and everything was great. Kate came and told us that she heard something going on outside. We told her that she's just being paranoid and that her mind is playing tricks on her. God, we were all wrong. After what seemed like an hour and a half, Kate comes up to us and said, "That's not in my head, there's someone outside." The girls started getting really scared and I thought it was just a burglar or something. Me and my dudes were kind of worried but not scared. Because it was a village and not a city, we thought there would be no burglars. We were wrong yet again. After maybe 4 to 7 minutes, we started hearing a loud banging at the door. Mike told me to get the girls to his room, which was upstairs, and I did what he said. After that happened, I went back downstairs and all of the lights were off. All 3 of them were crouching down and looked like they were trying to hide from someone or something. I spoke low. "What's going on down here?" Paul told me exactly this. "Dude, don't come down here. Mike saw someone with a shotgun outside." After he said that, I felt like we were all going to die. The first thing that came to my mind was what type of shotgun it was, so I asked, "What type of shotgun?" Paul then asked, "What?" So I said again, "What type of shotgun did he have? The pump one or the double barrel one?" And Mike said, "I think he has the double barrel one." I sat there thinking and said, "He only has 2 chances." Mike then replied, "What?" And I said back, "He only has 2 chances to hit something. If he comes in the house, we need to be really quick to disarm him." Paul and John both thought I was crazy, but Mike told them to shut up and that I was right. After that, I went into Mike's room and I said to the girls, "Call the police." Kate replied, "What?" I told them about the guy who was outside with a shotgun and to be careful. The 2 of them started crying and almost lost it. I told Kate again to call the police, and she did. After she made the call, I heard loud screaming and gunshots from where my friends were. I immediately rushed down and saw Mike bleeding from his shoulder. He screamed out loud for us to call the police. I told him Kate had already called them, and when I looked to my right, I saw Paul and John laying on some middle-aged guy who was screaming that he was going to kill us. John grabbed his shotgun and hit him in the head so hard that the guy fell unconscious. We called an ambulance right after that happened, and when the police showed up, we told them about everything. Mike went to the hospital and was fine after a few days. The police described him as a 42-year-old homeless man originally from Romania. We had no idea how or why he showed up to Mike's place and what his true intentions were. You would think the story ends here, but nope, it doesn't. It only ends for my friends, but not for me. One day in September, we decided it would be okay to smoke some joints that our friend got from his brother. I arrived as I usually did. We met up and went to our number one spot. Paul rolled 2 joints and we started smoking. Everything was once again really good. We were chilling and Mike mentioned that night and we were all laughing about it. He said things like, "If I didn't get shot, I probably would have killed him. That jerk broke my door." We laughed at him as he began coughing. After he was finished coughing, he asked me, "You wanted to hook up with Ellie that night, right?" I kind of laughed and said ironically, "I mean, if she wanted to." We were laughing once again and getting more high. It was now 9 p.m. when we decided to go home. Because it was the weekend and the bus didn't run, I had to walk home, which was about 6 miles away. But I didn't mind because I like long walks while being high. We all said goodbye to each other and my long journey began. I plugged in my headphones and listened to some music. As I was listening to music, I felt someone touching my shoulder. I pulled out my headphones and turned around. The only person I didn't want to meet was standing a few feet from me. It was the old drunk guy. I said, "Hello?" "Hey, do you got a light, buddy?" He replied. I said, "No, I don't." "No!" He screamed at me. "My friend is in prison because of you. It was the only thing he had to do and he messed it up. I'm going to kill you all by myself." After he said that, I punched him in his nose and started running. The only thing I wanted to do at that point was to find Mike's house. My adrenaline was pumping throughout my body when I saw he was right behind me with an old rusty kitchen knife. I began sprinting even more. I'm 240 pounds and 6 feet tall, but I ran so fast that I stumbled over my own foot and landed straight on my face. I wanted to get on my feet as fast as I could, but the guy jumped on me and started hitting me in the head and stabbing me in my back. Luckily, I had a backpack on me and a lot of the stabbing went into the backpack. I managed to hit him with the back of my head on his nose, and luckily it worked. I got up and ran away and screamed for help from the top of my lungs. About 4 people immediately came outside looking to see what was happening. When they saw me and that old man with the knife just meters behind me, they started to scream at him to leave me alone, and even started running towards us. After that, the police and an ambulance were called. I told them everything that happened and they took a statement before bringing me straight to the hospital. That backpack definitely saved my life. The other day, when I was lying in the hospital with my parents, literally everyone came in to visit me. Mike, John, Paul, Kate, Veronica, and Ellie. I told them that I didn't want to walk all the way home, so I stabbed myself, and of course they could tell I was joking. I could see the happiness on their faces from seeing me alive. As far as the old guy, he's going to prison for quite some time. 35 years from what I heard from my parents. Everything is normal now. I started going out more and even started dating Ellie. Here and there, I'm still going to go and smoke with my buddies. This experience was pretty horrible, I'm not gonna lie. But hey, at least I lost over 25 pounds and got a new girlfriend. I can't complain. Number 3. So this all happened on July 16th, 2016. My grandpa was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and I wanted to visit him one day. I called him and let him know that I was going to be coming. He was so happy to hear from me and even happier when I told him I'm going to visit him. To describe my grandpa, he had a lot of tattoos, a beard, and was bald, and had a big heart for his family. If somebody messed with his family, there's no way they'd get away with it without my grandpa noticing. I decided to sleep over at my grandpa's. I wanted him to have a great night and talk about everything. I got so excited that I got all of my stuff and went on my way to his house. My grandpa lives probably 30 miles from me, so I took the bus for about 22 miles and had to walk the rest, but I didn't mind it. There's not much that I wouldn't do for my grandpa. When I got out of the bus, I noticed that another 3 men got out as well. I didn't pay much attention to them. I just put on my earbuds and started walking. I walked about 1.5 miles when I noticed they were following me. I was 100% sure that they were following me because the way I took only led to my grandpa's house. I tried to focus on what to do next. When I looked behind me, they were closer, maybe 20 meters behind me now. I sped up a bit and started to get worried, but that's when it hit me. I can text my grandpa that someone's following me and he will drive his car to come get me and scare them off. At least, that's what I thought. When I took out my phone, there was no signal. Great, I said to myself. I was about 3 miles from my grandpa's house when I felt something on my shoulder. I immediately turned around and they were there, not even 1 meter away from me. When I took out my earbuds, I said, "What?" They didn't say anything and just tried to grab at me, but I was faster. One of them said, "You're coming with us right now." I said, "What? I'm not going anywhere with you. Leave me alone." And then the man said in a very cold voice, "You will come with us or we will kill you." I just stood there frozen. I didn't know what to do. When my adrenaline kicked in, I did a 180 spin and ran as fast as I could. I tried to look at my phone and saw that I got a signal. I immediately called my grandpa. The call went something like this. "Grandpa, help. Someone's following me. Help." "What? Where are you?" he replied. "I'm about 2 miles north from your house," I said. He replied saying, "I'm coming, don't worry." After another mile of sprinting, I was exhausted, and I fell to the ground. The men caught up to me and just started grabbing me at my legs and arms. I thought that was it, the end. But if there's a God out there, he knew I needed help. I then heard a car and it honking. When I turned around, it was my grandpa's car. I started laughing because I knew these guys were in trouble. My grandpa stepped out of his car with a Winchester rifle. When they saw it, they started running. My grandpa knew that they wanted to do something bad to me. He started shooting and he managed to hit 2 of them. One in the back of his left thigh and the other one to the calf. Then he told me, "We better call the police or I'm gonna have to kill them." I was still catching my breath while dialing 911. Before the police arrived at the scene, my grandpa beat one of the 2 men so badly that his front teeth went missing. After that, we tied them up and waited for the police. And that was it. It probably doesn't sound like it was that scary or horrifying, but for me, it was terrifying at the time. Unfortunately, my grandpa died exactly 1 year later after his diagnosis. He was the best, strongest, and kindest grandpa that I could have ever asked for. Even after a strong pain and really bad condition, he fought every single day to be here with us. I'm 17 years old now, and at the time of this story, I was 15. I've been sleeping with our photo under my pillow ever since, because I want to have him near me. Rest in peace, Grandpa. Number 4. I live by a highway, so it's normal to hear about accidents every now and then. I have witnessed one of these accidents many years ago, and I will never forget it. I was about 6 or 7 at the time, so my memory is super clear about that whole day. I believe I was playing with my big sister at the time like we normally did. Sometime during the day, we all noticed there were a lot of cars across the road from us. Being curious, my mom took my big sister and I with her since it was only the 3 of us home, and she didn't want to leave us by ourselves. What we all witnessed was completely horrible, and it still haunts me to this day. There was a car flipped upside down and a woman was hanging out of her window. Her head was smashed open and blood was everywhere. The worst part of it all was that she was still alive. She was screaming, and the smell of her blood was so overwhelming. My mom then told my big sister to take me back to the house while she stayed behind. I don't think I understood the situation too well at the time, or my memory was just blurry from the event because I didn't really think anything of it until last year. I'm now 24 years old, and I can still remember her screams and the smell of her blood. I don't wish that kind of horror upon anyone. Number 5. For reference, I'm a female. I'm pretty short, and I was kind of chunky back when this story occurred. Also, let it be known that I lived in a bad side of town at this point. So, back in the 7th grade, school had just gotten out, and my mom had finally decided that I was old enough to walk home alone. I deeply regret begging her so much now that I look back on it. So I start my walk, which wasn't very long, maybe 20 minutes if I was walking slow. I probably get about halfway home and I hear a car pull up behind me. Now, mind you, school had just gotten out, so I wasn't very concerned, and I was thinking it was just another parent coming off a side street to pick up their child. But as a woman who watched a lot of scary movies as a child, I was just a little curious. So I turned around not so subtly and saw a dark gray car parked on a side street a little ways down from me. The windows were tinted so I couldn't see the inside of the vehicle. Thinking nothing of it, I turned back around and continued my walk. Not 2 minutes later, I hear a car door slam from behind me. So I turned back around and a tall, medium-skinned man is walking towards me at a slow pace as the aforementioned car drives off. The man was quite a bit taller than me. I think I was around 4'6" at the time, and he may have been around 5'8" or 5'9". I'm a little spooked out, but figure if I just slow down he'll catch up and maybe pass me. A few minutes go by and I happen to glance back. He's quite a bit closer now and has slowed down to match my pace. I had a heavy school bag on and no cell phone at the time, as my mother didn't trust me yet. In my bag was my school schedule, which had my address and phone number, so there was no way I would just drop it and sprint. I sped my pace up quickly and continued glancing back every couple of seconds just to see how he reacted. A malicious grin broke out on the man's face as he sped up to match my pace. I also noticed that at this point he had a very large object in his front pocket resembling a gun. And before you ask how I knew it was a gun, I again remind you that I grew up in a bad part of town. This kind of thing was normal around here. I broke out in a sprint once I saw that, and I heard his footsteps speed up along with mine. I would love to say that I screamed or ran into a neighbor's house, but no. My stupid 12-year-old self decided that I could outrun him and that I would make it home. So I ran as fast as my legs could carry me and turned the corner leading to my house. My house is the third house from the corner, and the first house has what looks like a mini forest in front of it. So there's a lot of trees with branches hanging over the walkway. I dart home and make it onto the porch, and I glance back to the end of the street. This guy is still charging towards me, so I run into my house, slam the door, and lock it. I ran into my grandmother's room to look out her window as it allows you to see the front porch. I watched the man walk up to the steps, study the front of my house for a few moments, and casually walk back the way he came. I told my grandmother, and she called my mom and told her to come home and report this incident to my school. My school had me file a police report and said they would keep an eye on the route. My mom also had her friend's son walk me home the next day. I walked out of the building the same as before, and I started my walk with the son, and I saw the same dark gray car driving in circles around the outside of the school. Of course I said nothing and just continued walking and made it home without incident. If only my story ended there. After that night, I began to hear knocking on my window at around midnight every night. It would only last a few minutes and I was the only one that heard it. This went on for a few nights, with me just hiding under the covers and pretending I didn't hear it. One night I had turned the lights off, but was playing with my tablet on the floor. I heard the knocking again, not even realizing it was so late. With my light now turned off, the streetlight clearly illuminated a silhouette of what appeared to be a man of the same build as the one I had seen before. I didn't scream, I just climbed into bed and pretended that I didn't see him. The knocking continued for quite a while, probably a few months. Throughout that time, I began to see the car more often, but parked outside my house. I remember that I was taking out the trash one night and I saw the car. As soon as it noticed me, it drove off down the road, burning rubber. After that, I never saw the car again, and the knocking stopped. Not too long after, me and my family left town and moved somewhere new, and I haven't seen the car since. So, to the creepy guy who followed me home and stalked me, I really hope that I don't meet you or any other creepers ever again. Number 6. This happened when I was around 9 or 10 years old, and I was either in 4th or 5th grade at the time. My friends and I would frequent a park that's near my house and is practically in my backyard. It was just down a hill and past a hockey rink. On the day this happened, 2 of my friends, my brother, and I went down to the park. I was the oldest of the group and wasn't as energetic as them. After playing with them for a while, I decided to take a breather and sit down on a bench where I could watch them. An older man walks over and sits on the same bench as me. I'd estimate he was in his mid to late 50s, so somewhat of a normal dad age. Either that or he was just becoming a grandfather. He didn't sit at all that close and kept a safe distance. He started some innocent small talk, and it went from normal to creepy in seconds. "Are those your kids?" he asked. I froze. He asked me, a 9 or 10-year-old girl, if my 3 friends were my kids. I'm skinny, haven't gone through puberty, didn't know what sex was, and I didn't even know about periods yet. All I wanted was to get out of there as soon as possible. I stuttered out the only thing I could think of at the time. I can't have kids yet." I then left the park with my brother and my 2 friends still playing. Now, that may sound bad, but I was on autopilot and I could only think of getting away from this man. My friends and brother were around 6 to 8 years old, so I felt they were smart enough to know to stay away from this man if he approached them. And with how close my house was, it made me feel okay about leaving them. I can't remember anything else from that day, and I still feel the fear that the man instilled in me with that one question. I know I'm probably blowing the whole thing out of proportion, but how does an older man look at a 9 to 11-year-old girl, see 3 kids, and think to himself, obviously she's a single mother with 3 children, even though she's small as heck and has an ironing board as a chest? I'd hate to know what would have happened if I stuck around any longer. Nothing ever happened to my friends or my little brother, but I was really creeped out. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's video. These were a lot of interesting and creepy subscriber stories, and if you would like to be featured in the next one, be sure to send your story to southerncannibal@gmail.com. And before we bring this video to a close, let's shout out all of my $5 or more patrons, as well as my $3 patrons featured on screen. Shout out to Yulisa, Babe Lincoln, Beth A, Kate E, Carrie B, Celeste S, Courtney T, Ellie S, Howard R, Jacqueline W, Jazzy G, Jennifer M, Jess, Jonathan C, Catherine M, Carrie F, Matthew B, Michael G, Random Randy, Steph L, Tammy S, and Terry H. Thank all of you so much for becoming a patron and supporting me on Patreon. And if any of you watching would also like to be a patron and join these awesome people, head over to my Patreon at patreon.com/southerncannibal. Thanks everyone, and have a good one. And remember to always stay on.